It's the day after Veterans Day, but the Stanford Storytelling Project is continuing the conversation about veterans with an hour-long radio documentary. The documentary's airing follows an event this past Sunday, at which the interviewed veterans were present for a discussion with an audience of over 300. Many of us aren't close to anyone in the military, so we don't know what it's like to welcome veterans home. And even when we do meet veterans, it's difficult to know what to say. The divide between civilians and veterans makes it harder for veterans to come home, and harder for civilians to comprehend what really happens during wars half a world away. At Stanford University, there are 65 student veterans, 7 undergraduates, and 58 graduate. One of them is Russ Toll, a PhD student at Stanford in bioengineering who went to West Point and did a 15-month tour in Iraq with the U.S. Army.
We got to the airfield, and we're getting ready to load up, and the last people I saw before I got on were a couple sisters, some nuns.
He describes the moment he left for Iraq.
And they were, offering, little crosses that you could take with you, and, these are usually religious moments, you know what I mean? And so I said, yeah, I'll take one, and I'll never forget it was, it wasn't, precious metal or anything. It was some type of steel or whatever, but it was very bright and shiny. And I tied it to my pistol holster on my leg, and I still have it, but now it was completely brown with soot and explosive residue and things like that. So I've always used that as kind of a metaphor for the whole experience, where it started off shiny, it started off, somber but full of hope, and then when it came back, it still had the same form, but it was, irreparably tarnished in a lot of different ways.
Veterans like Russ don't often get to tell their personal stories of combat, the stories that tarnished them, or the stories that taught them things and made them who they are today. The Stanford Storytelling Project talked to 6 of Stanford's veterans and created an hour-long documentary that weaves their voices together to tell the collective story of how they enlisted, trained for war, fought, served during the occupation of Iraq, and eventually returned home as very different men and women. The radio documentary, called Returning Home, will air tomorrow, November 14th at 6 p.m. on KZSU 90.1 FM or at kzsulive.stanford.edu. You can download the podcast after it airs from iTunes or storytelling.stanford.edu. This is Zandra Clark for the Peninsula Press, a project of the Stanford Graduate Program in Journalism.